Welcome. So today I had a discussion with these gals the other day, and we're super honored to be having a conversation about children with special needs. And all three of these ladies work in different capacities or volunteer in different capacities, but they're also moms of children with special needs. So if y'all would please introduce yourselves, starting with, the slides, they're in alphabetical order. So we're going with A, then K, then S. Let's see. There we go.
Hi, everyone. My name is Eileen German. I serve here at CPC and lead our special needs ministry called Access. But in addition to that, I'm also a speech therapist and work part-time still in the school district. And I am the mother to a 12-year-old son who is autistic. And then my two neurotypical girls, Arrow and Isla, who are 8 and 5.
Okay, and what's the name of your 12-year-old son?
Oh, my 12-year-old son. How can I forget about his name? Eli. You've probably seen him around here.
And I am Katie Drucker. This is my family. As you can see, I've got 4 children. The older 3 are all in college now, so I just have our youngest at home. He's a sophomore in high school, and he has Down syndrome. His name is Will. I am a stay-at-home mom, but in my former life, prior to my 3rd child, I was a financial consultant.
Thank you. My name is Steph Sawyer, and I'm currently the vice principal of the junior high at the Christian Academy here. Was a special education teacher for years before that, an administrator in the public school in the special education department, and did a short stint as the assistant director of special education for the San Ramon School District. And I have 2 kids, one 18 and one 8. Finn, who's 8, you can see there, with Doug the dog. And then you can see him, he's almost as tall as me, but he has autism and ADHD. And let me just tell you, we had a 4-year-old and a 14-year-old at one point. Whew, that was a doozy. You know what I mean? I don't know what we were thinking, but it was a good time.
Okay, so one of the first questions that we have for you is, what is one thing that you wish people understood or knew about your child with special needs?
I can go. I think it's working now, yeah. I tapped it, which I probably shouldn't have done while you were talking. But when I think about Finn, probably the most obvious thing that I wish people understood was, like, he's huge. He's 8 years old, but he is 4'9" and like 110 pounds. Like, he's just sort of like, So on a very basic level, sometimes I wish people would take the time to sort of understand that he's only 8 and not 12, because he looks like he's 12. But also, with his ADHD and autism, there's a lot of we call them big feelings in our house. He's got a lot of big feelings, and we talk about, like, is it a big problem or a small problem? And how are we responding? Because if it's a small problem and your response is big, that can feel really scary for people. And so I wish that sometimes people would understand, like, he's not wanting that. It actually doesn't feel good for him when he has those big responses, in a sense, like that. That's actually really overwhelming for him. And so sometimes I wish also people would take a second to sort of understand, like, man, some of that's out of his control. Like, he actually is response for him that feels really big and scary. And so coming alongside him instead of sort of like, ooh, right, sort of pushing that away. And he doesn't quite understand big problem, small problem. Things that we think are small are super big for him. It feels really big for him because he just doesn't have that ability to, we're working on it. It's a journey, right? But so that would be one thing that I wish people, when they see that, that know that we're working, like, we're aware, and we're also working on that too, right? He's on a journey, we're on a journey.
I would say for Eli, similar. He does deal with a lot of big feelings, but also he is a flapper, so he tends to flap his hands a lot, and that's just his way of expressing excitement. But I think it can be off-putting to other peers, or they don't quite understand that, or even little kids will maybe sometimes look at him differently because of that. And I know when he was younger, he did a lot of that, and I think when his diagnosis was newer to us and we were still navigating this this journey, I often would almost shamefully feel embarrassed by it because it made him stand out to others. And I would kind of try to get him to stop. And then I think as I kind of grew in my journey as a mom or a parent of a child with special needs, I just leaned more into that God has designed him uniquely for this purpose of whatever he has here on this earth, but also designed him uniquely the things that come along with autism, which is different for everyone, but in Eli's case, his stimming and his flapping. And I kind of embraced it more and said, you know what, like this is a part of who he is. It's his way of expressing excitement, and I don't need to like dim his light, so to speak. And so I would really, I appreciate when others, don't stare at him or just kind of smile and kind of get that understanding of that's his way of demonstrating his excitement. And that it's not a bad thing. It's not a thing to be scary, and he doesn't, need to stop it. The same way we smile and go, ooh, when we get excited, he just likes to flap. And so I think that would be something that I'd love for others to just kind of embrace the way that we embrace it as a family.
I say with Will, he has Down syndrome, so obviously people can look at him and know right away that he has special needs. I think, unfortunately, most people look at people with Down syndrome and make a lot of assumptions. And I think that's the thing I wish people wouldn't do. Will is so capable and so smart, and I feel like many times society underestimates him. So I always go into a new school year or new environment and say, please don't underestimate him. He is so capable. And if you let him get away with doing very little, he will do very little. But if you expect him to do a lot, he will do a lot. And also along with that, he's a sophomore in high school now. And we get, sometimes funny emails from teachers like, Will did something in class. Like Will was waving his ruler in class and almost hit a kid. And I'm like, well, our response generally is, well, what would you do for any other student that waved a ruler and almost hit a kid? That's what you should do to Will. Like, he should be punished. You don't just let him get away with it. So I guess that's what I would say.
Are there any other inaccurate assumptions people tend to make, Steph or Eileen, that y'all would like to add to that?
I think also just specifically with autism, because they call it, the invisible diagnosis. It's not something physical that everybody can see. I think that just people will make the assumption of what an autistic individual is. And in the autistic community, there's a saying that says if you've met one individual with autism, you've met one individual with autism. It is a very broad spectrum, and everybody is different, just like you and I were designed differently. And so I think that it's important to keep that in mind, because when we would take Eli to different churches, as we were kind of exploring different churches as to find our home church, I would be nervous to say he had autism because I didn't want these preconceived notions that people had. Is he nonverbal or non-speaking? Does he have a lot of behaviors to be placed on him? And so I would just come in and say, yeah, he's got a speech delay and he might need some help interacting with peers, but he'll be fine. And I feel like that helped us a lot. So I think if, people were just a little bit more open-minded and just didn't make us have their own particular assumption about what an autistic child is capable of or what a child with Down syndrome is capable of, and just not focus on the diagnosis, but focus on the child or the individual.
And just quickly, I would say too, sometimes it may feel like a compliment when you say, and I've heard it a lot, like, oh, well, he doesn't even look like he has autism. Like, are you sure? I've actually had people look at me and go, are you sure he has autism? And I'm like, I am pretty sure. Like, I'm feeling pretty good about this. And we trust our pediatrician in the school district. Like, we're feeling like, just come live in our house. Just come visit us for an hour. So I think sometimes that feels like a compliment. And the reality is that actually is like, oh, but when we say that, you're actually missing part of who he is and how God created him. So when you try to take that and go, oh, but he doesn't even look like it, that's actually like, oh, we're actually working really hard with Finn to be like, the other day he goes, I don't think I have autism. And I was like, you do, right? Because he even in himself is like, well, I'm not like this person. And I said, you're right, because it looks different. So I think like for the most part, we're all fine with that. Yeah. We're all fine with, we've come to a place, we've grieved, we sometimes are still grieving, but it's actually more encouraging to be like, oh my gosh, like what great progress he's made, or oh my gosh, this is incredible. Like he has so many great gifts and so many great things that he's doing, because like I'm okay with it. Like it's okay. I don't need somebody to be like, he doesn't even look like it, or are you sure? So
you just shared a way that good-meaning people are communicating with you, but as I was sharing with them on our Zoom call the other day, when we know better, we do better. So what are some ways as moms with neurotypical kids, how can we better communicate to you or to your children, or as we're teaching our children about children with special needs, what are things that might be offensive that we accidentally say, and how should we correct that?
I'll address that. Like with Down syndrome specifically, and this is how it helps me remember, but like if you had a friend whose child had cancer, you wouldn't call him that cancer kid. You would say that child with cancer. And so the child goes first, before the diagnosis, before the disease, before the disability, whatever it might be. So in our case, you should refer to Will as a child or a person with Down syndrome. He's not a Downs kid. He's not a Down syndrome child. He's a child who happens to have Down syndrome. So it's the Down syndrome does not define him. He's a child. So that's just so you all know, that's how you talk about people with special needs. It's the child before the diagnosis.
Okay, I didn't ask you this on our Zoom call, so this is like hot off the press here. So we're getting a candid response. Can you share a story? This is somebody wrote this in. Can you share a story about how someone has shown God's love to you or your child with special needs?
I can think of a particular story for Eli. It was when he was in 5th grade. There was a particular girl in his class who's always she's just a sweet girl in general. But I remember I was helping him with his homework, and I noticed we were going through his email, and I noticed she had emailed him a whole little stick man. He loves stick man. And she made a stick man presentation for him, and it was about friendship and about, it was at the time, it was like Valentine's Day, and she said, Happy Valentine's Day. And I thought that was just such a sweet extension, and it took time, and it was purposeful and intentional, and it was just such a sweet, intentional gesture that made him so excited, because she really took the time to understand what he was interested in, and then just an easy expression of a genuine start of a friendship, and they built a little bond, and so that was really, really special for us and our family, and for Eli. He loved it.
I can think of a couple, certainly. If you guys know the Latondreses, like that's all I have to say, right? Like they have just sort of embraced on a very casual, but they just, we hang out fairly regularly, and they know that Finn, so look out if we all ever hang out, Finn loves to ride in other people's cars. It's like so fun for him to like sit in somebody else's car and sit in the back seat and check it out, and can I ride with, and so we will go walk our dogs, and we live in opposite directions, but inevitably and it sounds so small, but it's because they've gotten to know him, inevitably they know that at the end of our time together, he's gonna wanna ride home. But they live in the opposite direction as us, right? And they've gotten so good too, because they also know like our heart is that Finn needs to ask for that. Like they know that that's what he wants. We have spent enough time that they know, and they're so good. Again, it sounds so small, but they will wait. They will wait, and we'll kind of be standing around, and Finn will look up at me like, and I always go, well, you gotta ask, right? And so they won't say anything, but every time, it's a yes. Like they just take the time every time to say, yeah, you're gonna have to sit with Bear in the back. That's their dog, right? And Finn's like, that's fine. And then they'll take the long way, right? They'll take the long way back to our house. And it sounds really small, but for Finn, it's like such a powerful way to love him in a way that is simple. So, plus they're just the best, so.
I would say just inclusion, making sure that if you're throwing a birthday party, you invite all the boys in the class, not just, you know, not just a handful. And I don't know how big your classes are here at Christian Academy. They weren't that big, but I always told my kids, if you're having a party, everyone's included. We're not doing a birthday party for 5 girls. So that was huge. Will wants to be included. He thinks everyone is his friend. And the beauty, I will say, of Will and Down syndrome is he really doesn't know or care because he's not the one chatting, and so he wouldn't know that 5 girls or 5 boys got together and he wasn't included. He really wouldn't know. It's more the parents. It's hard for us when we go pick up our kids and we see a group of kids all walking off campus together and our son's the only one not invited. It's really, we'll drive by and wave to all of them and like shout their name, and so that is a blessing. But I would say for the parents, just including our kids is huge. And I know that can be scary. Unknowns are scary. And I would be fine, like even when he was young, like invite him to a birthday party, and if you want me to stay, I'd be happy to stay. It was just nice to have him included. And I would say, like, Will was pretty much, I would say, until about 3rd grade. I don't think the kids even noticed he was different. About 3rd grade is when there started to be kind of bigger gaps between what his peers could do and what he could do. So now he's in high school. Obviously, he looks very different than his peers. And he just had a friend in high school. It was such a gift. Like, call and see if he could take him, if he could go to the movies with them. And they went to Chick-fil-A and they went to the movies together. And it was awesome. And this boy is so special. He just sees Will as his peer. And even like his mom and my mom or his mom and me were trying to coordinate it. And he was like, I'm texting Will, stay out of it. And we were like, you're right, stay out of it. Like, and he did, he just pulled up, he texted Will ran out. I mean, just like any other 16-year-old would. So inclusion is huge. Just see our kids and include them.
Thanks for sharing. These are such good ways for us, for our eyes to be open, to see ways that we can much better love. Yeah.
Can I share one more thing?
Oh, yeah, of course.
As we talk about inclusion, inclusion for our kids is important, but I think also inclusion for mamas, daddies, all the parents of children, siblings with special needs. It could be very isolating when you don't have a strong community. And so I think, checking in on that mom or checking in on that dad or that family is really important too, because like Katie said, I think even for Eli, like he wouldn't quite care if people were isolating him or not including him. But as a mom, you hold a lot of that. It's the same way you would want any child to be included, right? Or you don't want them to feel left out. And so I think we hold a lot of that as moms, especially. And so just making sure that you're including other moms of children with special needs in conversations and outings with their kids or without their kids, but just creating a more inclusive environment for everyone.
Okay, so on that note, one of our Mothers Together moms is a mom of a child with special needs, and she wrote, I have a 4-year-old son with autism. I think the hardest part is just feeling isolated and alone. How do you manage the anxiety that comes with having a child with special needs? And I'll add to that, and as a parent, how do you feel walking into social settings?
That's a loaded question. I think one, early on is probably really hard, walking through that diagnosis early on. I worked in special education, and I noticed the signs right away for Eli when he was 1 year old. But even though it was still in my mind, it hit differently when we got the official diagnosis. It was just a confirmation, and it was hard to soak in. But I think what helped me get beyond that was, one, my husband. He was super encouraging, because I think the scariest part, I'm sure for you guys, is like, what is their future gonna look like? And as they get older and you realize how much they're doing, and how important God's purpose on their life is, and you lean into that more than the diagnosis or more than thinking about what they're gonna do or not gonna do, just leaning into God's purpose and drawing from that is really encouraging. Also, finding community, finding other mamas like us, access moms, moms within the community, and building those relationships. Because it's true, we kind of, even though we all have unique kids, we all can kind of identify together on some level in the sense of maybe feeling isolated or understanding that our kids might not be included, those kinds of things. And so drawing on your community and building a community of moms or families that you feel comfortable with was really, really helpful for me. I was able and blessed to find that early on. And so that kind of helped me navigate this journey a little bit easier and relieved a lot of the anxiety that I originally was having.
And I think sort of owning that anxiety, like that's valid. Like it is. Again, I worked in special education too, and truth be, some people have heard this. We had a hard time getting pregnant, and then I did get pregnant, which is amazing. That's like a whole other story, but we prayed my husband also worked in special education for a while. He's now a counselor at one of the high schools, but we prayed every night we would not have a child with autism. Literally every night. That was like the specific, because we were both like, that is hard. We could probably do a lot of other things. And so we knew pretty early on, because I knew the signs, and I was like, I think it's fine, right? Even I, who knew, did the same. No, I think it's fine. I think he's fine. It's just me. I just know too much. And so that anxiety still, he's 8, and I still have sort of anxiety around what will his future look like. Sometimes I miss the growth because I'm so worried, right? But I think once I then own that worry, talk to my husband about it or find friends and be like, I'm nervous about this, the power is taken away, right? When you verbalize it out loud, often the power of that gets taken out, and it's like, he'll be fine. Because really, he will be fine, right? There's people who care about him, and but I will say walking into social situations still gives us a lot of anxiety because we actually don't know how he might respond, especially if it's a new situation. But it could be the same old park, and something happens. He may have a meltdown. He gets really loud. Other kids get scared, and then you look around like, whose kid is that, right? No, I'm just kidding. But you sort of look around like, should I just pull him? Do I need to find that mom? Do I need to, you sort of panic, right? And so I think also remembering he was created uniquely. He was created in a way that is perfect. And so if he needs to put headphones on, we have become very comfortable with headphones, and so has he, because we've sort of said, I don't care if people look, because if this, like he wildly thrives at Disneyland. And that all happened because we put headphones on him. So it was not as it was not so noisy, and so now he can go and enjoy. And we watch people look at him in line, and then I will just tell, like, it's so loud for him that he wears headphones. And I've had moms go, do they sell them here? And I'm like, we had to bring them. Sorry about that. I should bring some extra. But I walking into places is scary because we don't know, I can only really speak for autism, but having worked with a lot of students, you don't know what may set them off, what may happen, and so if it is it too loud, or when you forget the headphones, then you're really panicking, right? Or you forget something. Like we are always probably thinking we're packing snacks, we're packing all their preferred foods, we're packing all this, we have thought, when I drop Finn off at school, I don't have the luxury of being like, great, he's at school. All day, I'm scrolling. Am I going to get a phone call? What if he gets mad at a friend? Even every day at school, it feels scary for us to drop him off because we just don't know how the day is going to go. We don't get to sort of let down when they're at school even, because that is also just a place where it can be challenging. That got really long, sorry.
That's okay. I would say, is there anxiety walking into situations? Yes. And like Steph said, you prepare ahead of time. I think as Will's gotten older too, I've gotten to a point where, I know better what we can do and what we can't do. We've definitely adapted our life. When I plan a vacation, I have to plan a vacation around Will. He's not going to go to a place where we're going to ride 10 miles on a bike, and we just can't. So we plan vacations that work for Will. I'm also, sometimes, I'm okay with now. I think I felt so much guilt around it in the beginning. But sometimes we just leave Will. I find someone that loves him, that will stay home with him, and we can go do things with my other 3 kids. And that's okay. Like, I've gotten to that point where I'm like, that's okay. Will is happy as can be at home. He would be miserable on this trip. And so it's okay sometimes to leave the little ones or the child with different needs at home. And then I think too, I cared a lot more, I think, when Will was younger about, I was worried about what people thought of us and how they were judging us. And I guess I've just gotten probably old and cranky, but I'm like, I don't care anymore. If you don't like my kid and you can't accept him because he's different, that's on you. And he is a blessing and you are missing out. And so I have just different eyes. And then I think finding community is so, so important. So with Will, there's an organization called the Down Syndrome Connection of the Bay Area. We are very involved there. And so Will has groups of peers that he can hang out with that also have Down syndrome. It just helps you kind of normalize things in your life when you can connect with other families that have a child with Down syndrome, and you can go, oh, it's not just Will, that's totally normal. Their kid does that too. Or, so yeah, community is really important. And I think for you moms that don't have a child with special needs, you can certainly be that community too. And I want to encourage you to be there for that friend. And I know you don't know what it looks like, and it's okay to say that, to just go, I know I can't understand how hard your day must have been because you saw my kid melt down or whatever, but I just want you to know I'm here for you, I love you, and let me know what you need. And yeah, so you can be that community too.
Okay, another question that a mom wrote in. She is an aunt of a child with special needs. She says, I have a niece that was recently diagnosed with autism at age 14. She's always had challenges socially and in school. My brother and sister-in-law are very private and don't ever talk about it. I know they are exhausted, and I have offered to take her for a week in the summer and Christmas, but they always decline. I try various things to help, but it's not received with open arms. What things can I do to help them?
I think just, and we talked about this, and it's, everybody has their own timing of when they are ready to receive the diagnosis and own the diagnosis. And maybe it's just not their timing. You can pray for them. You can just continue loving on your niece and just extending your love like you normally would. Offering and just continue offering. It's, you never know when somebody's going to be ready to walk on this journey completely and surrender it. It's hard. I get it. It's super hard to accept, and not everybody's timing is the same. And so I think just honoring that it's going to be on their time, but still, showing your love and just being God's light to them by still continuing to be there for your niece. That would be probably the best thing that you could do.
Yeah, and I'd say since the diagnosis was so late in life at 14, those parents, I am sure, are still processing, because I'll be honest with you, when you have that diagnosis, and I learned that Will had Down syndrome when I barely learned I was pregnant, and then I learned he had Down syndrome. So I had time to process while I was pregnant. You do go through a grieving process. You mourn the loss of having what you thought was going to be a typical child. And so I know those parents are going through that process, so you have to give them space and time. I also think it's such a sweet offer to take her for a week, but in those parents' minds, they're like, you don't know what you're asking. Like, you don't know what it looks like to spend a week with my child. You have to know what their routine looks like. You have to know what they'll eat. You have to know what they'll wear. You have to know. It's so many things. It's hard to kind of train someone to stay with your child. So I would invite yourself into that world so you can see it, so that you can better actually help with the child. So if you're a friend of mine and you see Will on a regular basis and you see that, right away, he's gluten-free, he's like, there's a lot of things you just kind of know about him if you get to know our family, and then it's easier to leave you with him. And it might have to start small, like take him for 2 hours, take him for a day. Okay, let's try an overnight. And then you can work your way up to a week, but start small.
Okay, a mom of a neurotypical child wrote, "What's the best way to teach our kids to approach helping someone they see with special needs while also not assuming that they need our help? Do we just ask if they need help?"
Yes. Same way you would do for anybody that you would see that may or may not need help. You could just ask. I don't think that it has to be as complicated as we make it, especially for our kids. And, just really teaching our kids that everybody is designed uniquely in God's image, and just reminding our own kids of that so that there doesn't have to be a hesitation if somebody needs help. You could just ask if they need help.
Yeah, and I think I talked on that earlier, but I would not point out, oh, that child's different. Make sure you help them. But like Eileen said, just like any child, I mean, if you saw any kid struggling with something, whether they had Down syndrome or autism or not, I would hope we teach our kids to be compassionate and to just say, like, can I help you? It looks like you're having trouble opening your water bottle. Do you need help? But don't just assume, don't go over and take it and take over, just ask.
I think sort of just tagged on that, I thought about that earlier, is there's also, it's like to the first question, but it's relevant here. There's also very neurotypical things kids with disabilities do. Yes. Like very age appropriate sort of like sass, like, oh, all of a sudden we've decided that we're, or sort of like those things that we would deem as like neurotypical, right? But like kids are kids. So when they're 13, whether they have autism or Down syndrome or they're still probably going to give you some lip a little bit. And so there are times when I'm like, oh, wow, that felt very age appropriate, and that's exciting. And also like, what a bummer. Yeah. So I think in the same way, like, don't assume they can't tie a shoe or they can't do those things, because either A, we're sometimes working on it, and so that's a good thing, but sometimes they are also just being 8, right? And so that would just made me think of that sometimes we have to remember that they're also kids. Like when Finn was 3, he was very 3, like, which is probably why people looked at me and were like, are you sure? And I was like, I know, right? But
Okay, so on the tables, Eileen created a page of resources for everyone to have. Can you touch on, if I was brand new and just discovering that my child was diagnosed with a special need, how would I go about that? And can you perhaps explain some of those resources?
Yeah, I think for families who are just walking through a diagnosis, one of the organizations that we're all a part of is Regional Center of the East Bay. They are a resource for families to access supports. And so that's where I started, was Regional Center, and that's how Eli was able to access many of his therapies like ABA and speech and OT. So reaching out to Regional Center, becoming a client of theirs. Another resource is our special needs ministry here at church, which is Access, and just trying to, I am the ministry manager and I have tons of resources, so if there's a specific need, I'm happy to help, but we also have a lot of great moms that are great resources too here. And so also, as we talk about building community, that's a big goal of Access, is to build community within the church as well. And then we talked about, what were some of the other resources?
Our local school district can be
Thank you, Steph.
an avenue for you as well, and they will serve kids 0 through age 22. So we actually didn't start at Regional Center. We started with our district in their infant program. So Finn started in a program at 18 months through the school district, and then transitioned to, they have preschool classes for kids, and all of that just is free for you. So if you have friends, or if you're concerned, and even if you're like, I don't know, but maybe I feel like something's going on, any one of us could help you walk through that. But the school district can do an assessment and help you sort of see, like, oh, is it a speech delay, or is it autism, or is it, no, they're just on their own journey right now, and so, but the local school district can also help tease that out for you as well.
And with the local school district, you don't have to already have a medical diagnosis. You can always just bring them in for the assessment, and just, even if you have questions in the back of your mind, this is a little bit different, you can just always initiate an assessment there as well.
And I'll tell you what not to do. So I told you I learned when I was barely pregnant that Will had Down syndrome. So of course, I immediately got on the internet and I start researching Down syndrome. And I learned the most horrible things. I mean, it was terrible. And I just thought, oh my word, I can't do this. And I had 4 kids in 5 years. So I had, very little children that I was still taking care of. And I was just panicked, like, how can I take care of my other 3 kids? And how can I be a good wife? And I can't care. It tells you the most horrible things out there sometimes on the internet. It gives you like the worst case, most extreme, like this could happen type situations. And so thankfully, one of our doctors had, after we learned about the diagnosis, said, do you know about the Down syndrome connection of the Bay Area? And we said, no. And he said, go in there. Immediately went in there, met this wonderful woman who gave me a pamphlet, and she was like, and she said to me, she goes, read this, don't read what's on the internet. And I was like, thank you, Lord. Mm-hmm. It was just so overwhelming. So as you all know, you can find everything you want to know on the internet and some things you don't want to know, and just the most extreme situations. So I would say community, find organizations, find people. I think, did you put our names and numbers on the, we were going to share those. If you all want our names or numbers, Tracy can give those to you. And just so you know, I also have a son who had epilepsy. So if any of you have that kind of need, I would be happy to talk to you about that as well.
Okay, our last question. Let's end on this. I'm going to ask it several ways, so you can answer. And this is another one we didn't talk about on our Zoom call, so it's fresh. How has raising your child affected your relationship with God? And how has raising your child grown your love for God, grown your love for others? Any of those questions?
I would say, without getting emotional, sorry, that when I was able to realize that God chose me to be Eli's mom, I just felt privileged and honored. And it was really hard for me to get there initially. But when I was able to realize that he was designed, as one of the Access moms said, on purpose with a purpose, I was able to lean into that. And you are dealing with so much isolation and worry and anxiety about your child. And I had to, and I'm so thankful that I had a God who would listen to me, who would just acknowledge those things for me that I needed to feel acknowledged for. Because, my husband can only do so much, or friends can only do so much, but being able to lean into God and pray over my son, and now my son prays over me, and him having his own relationship is so special. And I feel like this whole journey has, for me specifically, just strengthened my relationship with the Lord, and just made me realize how beautiful his creations are. And, he's allowed me to have these opportunities to meet other moms and families and connect and be able to serve in these different capacities. And so for me, I give all that to God, and I'm so thankful for this journey, and that he has designed this for our family this way. So it's been very meaningful and impactful for us and our family, and for me personally.
Obviously, it's like embarrassing whenever I share, like, we prayed every night, right? And then I mean, yes, but no. And then I look, and I feel the same way. I look at Finley now, he would prefer Finley. And I look And I think, I look at my career before, which was a path I chose, and I think, oh my gosh, God had been equipping me for Finn. And equipping John, who wanted to be a firefighter. We met. He then wanted to be a counselor, and I said, well, you should just work in a school while you go to school, and he ended up working in an SDC class, right? And so then equipping John to give him tools. But then I look at Finn, and I think, but he's the perfect kid for us. Like, I couldn't imagine any other kid for us. It was the only one we got to have together. We have two, but he's the only one we got to have together. And even last night, John and I looked at each other and we're like, we die. He's the perfect, God knew exactly who we needed in our family. And it was Finley. And that has been a sweet reminder, I think, for me when I look at my relationship with God of like, oh my gosh, you are allowing me to use my gifts every day in my own family. And that is such a treat, but it's also given me eyes to see other people. Like, God has just allowed me through Finn to see the way he sees, to see people the way he sees people, to see things like geography that I had no interest in, right? Passions and things that I'm like, ooh, I did not know all the capitals of India, but now I do, which was not on my bingo card for being a mom. But like all those, that then gives me separate eyes at work to know how to love kids better at a school, right? But I agree. I think once I got to the place where I could go like, oh, this wasn't anything I did or my mistake but like this is God's plan. It does, you just love God more because you think what a privilege that God chose me for Finn. But that God chose Finn for me. So.
Yeah, I'd say I don't know how you do it without God, especially during my diagnosis when I was pregnant. That was just the hardest time in my life. I can't even tell you. I felt like I was drowning. I mean, you can imagine I had a 4-year-old, a 2-year-old, and a 1-year-old, and then I was pregnant with this child with Down syndrome. And I just felt like I was drowning. And I kept thinking, God, I can't do this. I can't do this. But when you're that desperate, I mean, I was on my knees, and I have never felt closer to God. Like, I just felt the physical presence of God with me, and I could hear him saying, don't be afraid. You've got this. Don't be afraid. And, and I can see such blessings in our life. I would never choose, of course. I don't think anyone's like, give me a child with Down syndrome, God. But I can see so many blessings in our life. I think he's given us patience. I think Will has eyes that are more Christ-like than anyone I've ever met. He doesn't look at your color. He doesn't see what you're wearing. He doesn't see if you're a male or female. He sees none of it. He has a heart that's so full of love, and he loves like Jesus calls us to love. And I think our family has learned so much from that. I have so many fun stories I could tell you. I'll just give you one. But we were eating at Original Joe's in North Beach, and we came out, and right there in Washington Square Park right there was this group of homeless men, and they were very drunk and dancing and singing. Will ran right up before we could even grab him, and he starts dancing and singing. And of course, I'm like, oh my God, Joe, go get him. But I was like, that's what Jesus would do. And there's just so many stories I could tell you that are like that. And then my other 3 kids, I will tell you, they are so equipped for so many things in this life that I think most adults couldn't handle. My kids don't blink an eye if, I've left Will at home with them, and they've had to, he's had accidents where they've had to get him out of his poopy pants and throw him in the wash and throw him in the bathtub and get him cleaned up. They don't even blink an eye at it anymore. Like, it's just life with Will, and I feel like they are so equipped and so compassionate and tolerant for things that most of us are not. So there are many blessings as well, and I too feel like it is a privilege. It's a very hard burden at times too. I'm going to be honest. But it is a real privilege to be a mom in general. And in many ways, Will's easier than my other kids. Like I said, he doesn't have the anxiety of watching other kids go off in groups and caring. He doesn't care if he has the right outfit for homecoming. He doesn't care. I don't worry about him drinking or doing drugs or hanging out with the wrong people. So I think it's perspective, and that's true in life. It's how we choose to look at life. So I just encourage all of us to dig deep and to, every day I pray, Lord, just give me eyes to see more like you and a heart to love more like you. And I feel like having will is a big part of that, and he teaches me that every day.
Okay, so the four of us on this stage, we believe that what the Bible says is true, and God says he works all things for our good and for his glory, and our good is not our comfort. It's what makes us look more like Jesus. And so I know God is working all things in all of our lives, but especially as you, as mothers of children with special needs, he is making you look more like Jesus. So thank you so much for sharing so bravely and vulnerably with this crowd of women. Before we go into our discussion time, this is also not something we talked about, but I kind of feel it in my heart and I'm going with it. If you are a mom of a child with special needs, I would love if you feel comfortable like coming just closer to the front of the stage, and I'm going to ask our most senior mom of a child with special needs,
The old
Katie.
lady.
Katie, would you pray for all of us and especially for the moms of children with special needs? So if you're a mom, if you would just come up, we would love to pray for you.
Down? Why don't we come down? I don't want to stand up here for everybody. Yeah. It's a lot.
Yeah. So I just want to remind all of us, days are hard, but all of us are doing such a good job. And thank you for doing that. And just really appreciate, I think God always called us to put us in a situation to actually not just for us, but for so many of us. We there for each other, so remind yourself you're never alone, and we all need each other. Yeah.
Sit down. Heavenly Father, I just thank you so much for the privilege of sharing. I thank you for the special honor it is to be a mom. Lord, it is the hardest job we will ever do, but it is also the most rewarding and fulfilling job. I pray that you give us strength. I pray that you would give us patience. I pray that you would just give us compassion and wisdom and discernment as we raise our families, Lord. May we raise them to love you. That is the most important thing we can do for our kids. God, those of us with children with special needs, it is hard. It is a burden, and you know that. I thank you that you are a God who knows, that you are a God who has lived among us and has experienced things, and you know hardship. And I thank you that you're a God that has such compassion on us. I pray that you just give us moms, especially just strength and patience. I pray that you give us community. I pray that you will give us vulnerability so that we are honest and we are not afraid to share that it's hard, and that we're not afraid to share that there is a lot of anxiety that goes with raising children with special needs. But to be honest, there's a lot of anxiety with just raising kids in general. So God, equip us. Thank you again for the amazing opportunity. Just go before us, be at the center of our families and our marriages, strengthen us, and draw us near to you every day. In Jesus' name we pray, amen.
Thank you so much, Katie, Steph, and Eileen, for just educating us, sharing with us. That was a really, really special morning, and I just can't thank you enough. So as we are about to transition into our discussion time, let's see. There's my thank you. Here are some questions that we can talk about. The first one is, what are your takeaways from this conversation? The next two are, one is if you have a family member with special needs, share one way someone has shown God's love to your family member, and or share one thing you wish others understood about your family member with special needs. Alternatively, if you do not have a family member with special needs, reflect on a connection that you do have to a person with special needs, and what is one action step you can take to love on that person or that family. And then the last one is, we're at Mothers Together and we're all moms. As a mom, how can you model and teach your kids that people with special needs are highly valued, loved, and included in the kingdom of God and in this world. And I will be back up here. Let's see, it's 10:12. I'll be back up here at 10:45. All right, thank you.